I should turn it down. I don't. Okay. Tobi has just told you about his RRDtool. Well, I'm going to show you what can be done with it. I won't claim that I'm a great expert about this, but what Tobi provided was a good base on. Now, first question is, why would I bother? Well, the ones that were out there didn't do what I wanted them to do. The commercial ones were hideously overpriced. I'm sure anybody who's bought them knows. And anytime they had any customizing ability, they wouldn't let me do what I wanted to do. They had some minor things. So I figured I didn't actually start out to make something as big as it got, but it turns out to be not too bad. What I wanted is I wanted graphs and long-term data storage, like MRTG and RRDtool gave you. But I also wanted some other things too. I wanted alerts, and status levels, like knockall. If you don't know knockall, it's worth giving it a look. It lets you generate alerts so you can, if you found under certain data conditions, you say if this interface has more than a certain amount of data, I want to know about it. I also wanted to get one thing reasonably efficient, which was I want to be able to pull in data from non-SNMP sources. RRDtool, the original MRTG, did fine for SNMP data, but for other stuff it was, well, we'll say it's not very efficient. I want to be able to get data from anywhere I could find it and put it in. Well, the good things about it are RRDtool. That's the best part. Tobi gave us a really good start. The graphs, well, that's again part of RRDtool. Long-term data retention, that's RRDtool. And basically, the thing that's good about my Remstats is RRDtool. No, seriously, the SNMP, the non-SNMP data I find is a big win because there's always data lying around somewhere else, in log files, some special monitoring program for a particular machine, whatever. I wanted to be able to have web pages that told me everything about a particular box, everything I knew about it. I wanted to be able to have web pages that had live data in them that was updated right now. Not the long-term data too, but I wanted to be able to get other things. I wanted to be able to get images with live data being put on them in some graphical form. And I also want to know what's happened over the long term so I can see that at a particular time of the day, maybe one of the routers likes to reboot at 3 o'clock in the morning. It'd be nice to see this over a longer term. And it might be nice to have that consolidated with other logs so that I can tell, oh, it's caused by this thing. The one thing that really helps the way my program works is because it's separated the updating process from the data collection process. So you can write your own collector. If you have data in some other form, you can write a program, and all it has to do is provide my standard input form, feed it to the updater, and everything else is the same. You don't have to change anything. Okay, as I said, there's a bunch of collectors, different collectors. I have collectors for SNMP data. I have collectors for pulling things out of log files on remote machines. I have things that run various programs on Unix box, like DF and whatnot, to pull information off them if you don't have SNMP on them. I have a thing which runs multi-ping and gets ping data for all the machines you're interested in. I'm sure I'm forgetting one, but anyway, a whole bunch of different collectors. All the collectors get run simultaneously. At the moment I'm running them out of a simple shell script because that way, if you don't like some of them, you can comment them out. And there are some people who've already done that. After the collectors have all done fed their input into the updater, then there's various monitors specific to certain things. One of them, for example, is the alert monitor, which looks at all the latest data that's come in, compares it to the levels you've set to be things you want to know about, and triggers an alert. An alert can run any program you want to do that alert. I provide a little shell script which sends the email, but if you have some pager program, go ahead. And then, after all that's done, I generate web pages, if I need to. Because of RRD CGI, I don't need to run them every time. I generate the web pages only when the configuration file changes, which is also a big win because after generating graphs, generating the web pages was the next most consumptive thing. And well, I'll show you what some of it looks like. There's the standard index that I generate. You can see it has notes for all the individual. You can group them, but all the hosts you're monitoring get grouped into whatever groups you want. You can choose your own names. And it puts up a simple little thing that tells you whether that machine is reachable. That's a ping. That's reachable via ping. The little red blot you can see up there. Can I turn this thing on? Yeah, there we go. That little red blot there is simply saying that that particular machine has been rebooted within the last day. You can set what time you want. I save it for a day because I figure I'll probably see it within that time. This is another index that's generated automatically. It's showing you ping data for the last 2 hours. Again, if you don't like that time interval, you're welcome to change it. You get these little thumbnail sketches, I call them. And again, they're all links to it, point off to the data for a particular host, which looks sort of like that. You get some static text. Well, it's not actually static. Yeah, some of it's static. For example, a description. You put that in, telling it what this thing actually is, who to contact if there's a problem. Its IP number. You don't have to code that in the configuration file. It'll look it up if you want, or you can code it if it's not in DNS. This stuff, the operating system, hardware, uptime, and status, all that is coming out of status files that get generated by the various collectors. They don't just generate the data that goes into the RRD databases. They also generate some other things. For example, uptime. In this particular case, that uptime is coming out of the uptime program. The hardware and the operating system are coming out of uname. That's because it happens to be a Unix host. But then you can have data. You can graph almost anything you can get data for. You want ping status, ping response. I sent 10 pings to it. How much did I get back? That one's pretty boring because it's on my local LAN. How long did it take to respond? Again, it's pretty boring. CPU usage, it's not very busy. Load average, again, says the same thing. But you can monitor anything you can get the data for. And I monitor, for example, temperatures in UPSs because I don't have temperature sensors in all the rooms. Temperature in the UPS gives me some idea what's going on in there. This is a bit blurry. It's just a little traceroute CGI that I wrote that if you, how do I go back here? If you click on this little tool, you can attach various tools to any particular host. If you click on that, then it'll give you a traceroute to there. And there's a ping tool, and there's a bunch of other tools that I've written to attach to things. You can also have ones that are specific to the host that pull up some information that means something for that particular host. This page is just showing you what things currently have an alert status that is not an alert status that's interesting, i.e. it's not normal. And it shows you what the host is, what RRD it's being triggered off of, the variable in that RRD, what value caused it to think there was a problem, what status I'm giving it, all this stuff. If you want to, you can also turn that alert off so it will stop bothering you. You can configure you can configure for the alerts in the configuration file and tell it you want one alert after this amount of time and then alerts every so often, but you may not have access to the configuration file. If you just go in there and go and cross out that box, it'll stop harassing you. And you can put a comment in there that gets logged in case you want to tell somebody, I've got it, don't bother with that one. You can also resort it if you want and throw away. If you've got a whole bunch of things going into some various non-normal status, you can turn them off because you can show only some of the higher status ones if you want to. This is showing you not so much what's in alert now as what things have been showing some kind of been in some interesting status at some point. This particular is just a log file for a particular day. This is just alert status is things that got triggered on the alert page you saw before. New host, something noticed a host that had never been seen before. Boot, some machine's uptime became less than it was last time. In other words, it just booted. This is one of the live data pages that gets generated automatically for every host that has interfaces, and it shows you various totals. These are the rates. These are not coming out of the SNMP data. They're coming out of the RRD databases, because I want the rates, and I don't want to have to calculate the rates because RRD already does that. It'll also pull off the comments via SNMP if you have a Cisco router, or it's putting, I think there's another standard, one of the other standard MIBs has something. It'll use whichever one it finds, or nothing if it doesn't find anything. This page is an example of another kind of thing you might do. It'll show you status of BGP peers, and it pulls off all the data. I updated this one a little. It doesn't have the latest version, which shows you the last error code. But there's all kinds of anything you can get data. Again, if you can get it via SNMP and get it into your RRD database, well, I can show it to here. There's an example of what you might do as graphics. This is showing the flow between various routers in our external network. We don't have a huge network because we're not an ISP, but it shows where the data is going. This is an old one. The reason this particular link is showing 0 is because I told it the wrong interface. Well, garbage in, garbage out. Again, it's completely configurable. To make this, you basically have to write a small special purpose program, but you only have to write it once, and then the data goes in live. Okay, how do I make it do that? Well, I got one configuration file that all the programs use, because it's not a single program. It's done with all different programs, each doing one thing in the Unix way. There's various sections for various things, like, for example, graph time intervals. Rather than each graph saying a particular time interval, I give that time interval a name, and I associate the name with the number farther back. That way I can change the time intervals anytime I want without having to touch the graph definitions. The colors, again, have names. The archives, if you want it, averages over a day or minimums over a month, whatever. They all have names, and they get substituted in, so you can invent new ones easily. It can also do port monitoring. That was another collector I forgot. It can say, for example, your SNMP port, your SMTP port, your send mail sitting there. It can tell you how fast it responds. It can look at the response that comes back when you send a particular thing back to it and see, is it in a normal state? Well, you have to define what normal means, but you can monitor it and give it a particular status if you want to off that. The configuration file is quite large. I give a bunch of boilerplate with the installation that you can change a few lines at the top and ignore the rest of it and just use it in the host definitions later if you want to. I also have some configuration tools to create configuration file fragments. Okay, and that way you don't have to do them all by hand. You can. They're not difficult once you've done it a few times, but you don't have to. If you've got a huge list of hosts, you can feed it into one of these and it'll produce the configuration for it. Where you get it, there's a URL there. I'll put that back up at the end. These are the three pieces. There are a couple, I think 3 Perl modules that I have not integrated yet. The one problem with this is that I haven't finished the install properly, the way I'd like it to be done. So it's a little bit more manual than I'd like. The end. I have a few more slides if you want to look at various configuration file pieces, but I'm not going to go into that unless somebody really wants to. Stop that. There, we'll leave it there. Okay, any questions?
Great.
Thank you.
We do have time for a couple of questions if folks wanted to ask them. I guess one question I did have, Thomas. When you're doing the interrogation of the ports, I'm wondering to what degree do you evaluate what comes back to you?
Well, what you do is it's very simple at the moment. You simply give it a string that gets sent, which can include line feeds if you want to, and it matches what comes back from that against regular expressions that you supply, and you attach a status to each particular regular expression. So you say if it says this, it's considered to be down, or whatever.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Response or hang.
Whatever.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Thomas.
Thank you.